My intention as a life and wellness coach is to make sure that people are feeling more aligned in their lives. You realize you're just not happy and you have neglected yourself, you're not feeling connected to yourself, and I have reached that point many times.
Our generation is now actually dealing with depression a lot more than compared to the generation before us, our parents.
I do feel like being in India, less people are willing to share. But if I am talking to someone who is working their corporate job in a big city, who is around the conversation of mental health, then they're more open to it.
Hi everyone, welcome to our channel Untold. I'm Aisha and today we have a special guest, Manisha. I will let Manisha introduce herself now.
Amazing. Hi everyone, I am Manisha. I am really excited to be here for a conversation today. I do work as a life and wellness coach, and I know that we'll be diving into that a lot more very soon.
Yes. Let's start with life and wellness coach. What exactly is your job? What do you do?
That's a great first question. I find that the world of coaching has changed so much, so it's hard to know what that even means now. My intention as a life and wellness coach is to make sure that people are feeling more aligned in their lives, are living lives that they truly feel content with, and are also living in a way that feels healthy to them in a physical, emotional, mental, spiritual way. So that can of course be interpreted in many ways, but is to guide people in living a life that just feels healthy.
Yeah, I think that's very useful, considering how these days everybody is dealing with depression, stress, anxiety. I think that's a very interesting topic that we're going to jump into today. So what got you into this?
There's many different things. I would say one big part of it has been looking at my own life and how I've perhaps spent a large part of my life maybe not feeling aligned and doing things based on what I thought I should be doing. I think that's a very probably common experience that a lot of, like, especially women face as well. We feel like we're doing things based on what society is expecting us to do. And you hit a point where you realize you're just not happy and you have neglected yourself, you're not feeling connected to yourself. And I have reached that point many times. And I also have committed so much of my career working in the NGO sector, and I love all the jobs that I have, but that also meant that I gave so much of myself to it that I reached complete burnout, where I could no longer even work. I didn't know what I liked about my work anymore. And again, that leading to anxiety, depression, stress that I just didn't feel like I had control over. And then getting to a point where I realized everyone around me felt the same way. And I think like the pandemic was a really big turning point for a lot of people to realize that we all are kind of just living lives that we're not happy with. And we're over giving ourselves to our jobs without realizing that it needs to be done in a really mindful and intentional way.
Right. What do you think? How does one actually identify that they're suffering with depression or anxiety? I don't think many people realize that they're actually suffering with something like that. They can, maybe people think they're sad for a temporary moment, a brief moment in life due to various reasons. How do you actually identify and differentiate between a temporary sadness or a low mood or an actual depression or anxiety?
Yeah, and the line is so blurred between the two, because we will have off moments, of course. We're not meant to go about our lives feeling perfect all the time. That doesn't exist. We're humans, it's going to fluctuate. And at the same time, there are points in life where you realize I should get help. And there are many markers that can show up in that case. And of course, if we look at depression or anxiety or stress, the spectrum is so wide on how someone might be actually experiencing it as well. And at what point you think you might need help, and at what point you just need to reach out to a friend. A big part of my experience and what I see with people that I work with as well is them realizing they're kind of in default mode. You're go, 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 waking up in the morning, going to work, doing your job, coming back home, making dinner, going to bed. There's no sense of excitement towards life, no curiosity towards life. You don't feel connected to your body. You don't feel like moving. You don't feel like being creative. And I feel like once there's this like sense of dullness almost, I think that, and there's a whole quote around like the opposite of happiness is like depression. Like if you, and are you able to catch yourself in that moment? And people will catch themselves at different points in time, right? You might experience panic attacks or anxiety attacks, and I think that's like also a big marker of asking yourself what is now feeling disconnected from your body.
Yeah. Do you think that our generation is now actually dealing with depression a lot more than compared to the generation before us, like parents? Maybe they felt the same way, maybe they dealt with it, but they didn't actually know what they were going through was actually depression or anxiety. Maybe they took it as life. But now people are maybe becoming more aware of these terms, because I feel like every other person that I know has been in depression at some part of their life or are struggling at the moment. What do you have to say about that?
You said it right, is that they don't know. I think that we are privileged enough to have the language and have the space to explore ourselves in that way, whereas our parents are surviving, right? They need to make sure that they can have income to be able to pay for shelter and food and their children's lives and education and make sure they're settled. And that is their life purpose. At least I would say, like my parents and a lot of the other parents that I know. And I find that even if they were experiencing things mentally, emotionally that was disconnected from who they are, that's not where their priority is. And I would say that's also the reason why a lot of our generation is now finally saying, hey, we need to unpack this. And we need to also acknowledge that that might be one of the reasons why we are now experiencing it more. And how things can be passed down as well. Like if someone in our family experienced something traumatic, there's a chance that it's going to be passed down. And now we're experiencing that. But now it's a whole process to go through the idea of like, where did it come from? And how do I unpack it and allow myself to feel it without blaming my parents? Like they had their own experience, I'm having my own experience. So I think that, yes, we are definitely naming it more. Our generation is like naming it more. We have more resources, more support systems, more conversations around mental health.
Yeah, absolutely true. And what would you say to the new generation? How do they deal with it? Once they have identified that they're dealing with something called depression or anxiety, what next? What do they do? How do they accept it? How do they deal with it?
If they are dealing with it.
If they are dealing with it, that is true.
If they are dealing with it. Talk therapy, I think, is becoming finally more normalized. I think both in like the Western world and Eastern world as well, is like there are a lot more therapists that are there to offer support systems. In the Western world, many therapists are fully booked out because more people are now finally able to acknowledge that they're like having therapy is a great thing actually. And I have friends that now we say like, oh, I can't meet that day because I have a therapy appointment, and that's just completely normalized. And I think that's a really beautiful thing.
But do you really think this has like it definitely has become normalized in the western side of the world, but is it the same in the eastern side back home?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think it all depends on your privilege and your class, right? I think that if you're living in a big city and you are exposed to maybe more Western influence as well, then yes, then you would feel like therapy is definitely something that you can pursue. It's not the same. It's not the same. I do feel like being in India, less people are willing to share. But if I am talking to someone who is working their corporate job in a big city, who is around the conversation of mental health, then they're more open to it. But it's not normalized in the same way. I wish it was. But I think therapy is also not accessible for everyone. It's at the end of the day, it's not affordable for most people as well. So there's so many other tools that I feel like if you can't access therapy, then there's so many other things. I think a big part of this conversation sometimes lacks this whole mind-body connection too, is that If you're feeling down in your mind, then move your body, right? And there's so many different ways to do it, many different tools now. Do yoga, go for a run, go dance, meditate, do breath work. And I feel all of them are like really important tools to have you understand your mind more. Write, journal, like
Yeah,
endless.
I think people don't really understand that your body and your mind, they're all interconnected. And you can actually, it's not just about, okay, you're suffering with something mentally, you can actually use your body as well to release that stress, as you said.
Is there something that you do to release it?
I definitely do, yes. I think for me, gym plays a big part. Swimming, gym.
Yeah.
that
How does your
definitely-
mind feel after you move your body at the gym?
I think I've become a lot at ease. There has been a time where I was overthinking about things. Maybe I shouldn't have. They weren't as important, but at that point of time I was. And to overcome that, that's the path that I chose. I went on to going to gym regularly, opting for swimming. By the time I'd get done with all of that, I'd be so mentally exhausted. I'd be like, okay, there's no time for me to think about anything else. Just go to sleep, wake up, do something else. I didn't even realize when I actually got myself out of that phase. I think that's something that worked for me.
Following up to the impact that the gym has on you, I'm curious to ask something else as well. Is that you said that going to the gym and releasing that out of your body allows you to then like forget the things that were happening in your mind. Do you feel like that's allowing you to still understand yourself better, to process things, or do you feel like in some ways it's also perhaps like the other side of going to the gym is maybe distracting you from actually going deeper?
I don't think it distracted me. I think even if it did, I think it was in a positive way because it made me reach that point where I realized that all the things that I was thinking about, they weren't really that important.
Awesome.
Like I shouldn't be giving that much time or thought to those things. So that I think maybe it did distract me in a way, but then it did work. End of the day, it did work.
And that's awesome because that's exactly like a lot of times we are stuck in the overthinking mode.
Yeah.
Right? And like our brain and the way our mind works, the way our thoughts work is not defining who we are. And yeah, that's such a good point. Is sometimes even you go for a 10-minute walk and all of a sudden you'll have the realization of like, why did I spend so much time thinking about that? Like that doesn't matter. It's so minor. So that's amazing that gym is able to help you with that.
Absolutely. So going back to what we were talking about earlier, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people out there who don't have the financial means to actually go to therapy, or maybe go for a gym membership. What do you suggest to those people? There are people out there who don't even have kind of close friends or family that they can go to discuss their problems with. What do you suggest to those people?
Yeah, that's such a tricky balance, right? And I find that it also comes from this place of privilege when I say like, hey, go for a walk in nature. Maybe even that doesn't exist for people. Maybe the safety of being outdoors doesn't exist in where they are too. And I feel like when we're looking at our well-being, there's many different pillars that we can assess in some ways. Like the emotional well-being is, are you even processing what you're going through? Sometimes we are just too scared to even name that, like, I feel sad. That's really hard for us to say, or I feel angry. And okay, now that I've named it, where is it coming from? And I think the practice of actually reflecting on an emotion that you're feeling, I think emotional well-being is kind of the core need of it all. And then on top of that, it can go deeper now. So I feel social well-being is a big part of it. You mentioned, like, what if someone doesn't have friends? What if they can't access therapy? And that's honestly really scary to imagine, given that humans are social beings. Like, we need to connect with each other. And if we're just processing on our own and self-isolating and not actually connecting with the world beyond us, then how are we going to get out of this like bubble that we create? And it's hard to say because I'm like, then find a friend. Find a friend that you can share this with, and someone who can actually listen to how you're doing. Right? These days, we're so quick to be like, how are you? Good. That's it. Nothing else. But what if someone actually said, thank you for asking. I'm not so well. Do you have space to listen?
Yeah.
That would be a complete game changer. And I wish that we could do more of that with friends in our lives and even work people. Like if you're spending so many hours at work, is there someone at work that can listen to you? Is there like a person that's responsible for keeping everyone happy at work that you can share something with and they can refer you to someone? So I always say, like, yes, process on your own, and at the same time find someone, whether it's a friend or family member, or if you can access professional help. But I understand that it is not always financially accessible.
Okay, so what would be your last message to someone who's going through all of this?
My last message is create space for yourself to be still, to slow down. I feel that we are distracting ourselves. We are avoiding the emotions in some ways. And if we continue to avoid, then we'll never move past the emotion. And I feel being still could be interpreted in many ways. Like, go take the walk. Go take a walk in the park that's close to you. Go start your day with 10 minutes of just sitting and pausing, not feeling like you have to do something. Put your phone away. Like, if you want to write, that's a wonderful tool to process as well. I'm not even saying go meditate, because I think that can also look different and sometimes inaccessible to people. But like, just sit and close your eyes and slow down and like notice your breath for the first time, this thing that keeps us alive. And I know this may feel like such a simple answer, but if like we all could just pause more, that is actually such a big, like, small action with potential to create really big change.
Right, okay. So what are you doing next? How can people connect with you if they want to?
Yeah, of course. I really care about this work, and I think that for me it's showing up in different ways. I'm working with people one-on-one that are looking for that guidance to feel better and feel like they can give themselves permission to slow down and give themselves permission to actually approach life in a more intentional way. So I do life coaching and wellness coaching for people that might be burnt out and are ready to make change in their life. And then I'm also creating a lot of training for workplaces. I find that if we're spending so much time at work, that ends up being a source of frustration for a lot of people. And people are just used to the idea of being stressed and burnt out at work. So if we can bring more mindfulness at work, more intentional leadership at work, more opportunities for people to connect with themselves and then connect with each other, so that if they're enjoying being at work and they're able to express themselves where they're spending so much time, that will automatically translate to all other areas of their lives.
Perfect. So do you have any Insta channel, YouTube? How can people actually connect with you if they would like to reach out to you?
Yeah, of course. I have my website, manishanarula.com, and then my Instagram as well, aligned with Manisha, where I share a lot of stories around these topics.
Perfect. So we will be tagging her channel, Insta, all the information that you need, her website link as well, and please go check it out. I'm sure it'll be of great help to you and you would love it. Thanks for watching our video, and we'll see you in our next video soon. Thank you. Bye.